so many people here, I think it's an indication that nuts have a lot of potential in Georgia. I was introduced by Katerina. I'm the manager of this project, regional project that covers 4 countries, Georgia, Moldova, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. And our goal basically is to open up the opportunities in these countries for development of various types of high-value chains. So basically adding value to what's already produced or introducing new things that could be produced with additional opportunities for making money, for employment, for better revenues for the countries, sometimes for import substitution. I've been working in Georgia for many years and I love this country, and I think when people ask me, okay, you know, why life expectancy in Georgia is so high? You know, in the former Soviet Union, Georgia was ranked #1. I think my answer is usually a huge consumption of nuts compared to other countries. I've never seen a country that has nuts in pretty much every meal. And I love Georgian meals, so I think this could be something that that's also suggesting that Georgia has a lot of potential in this business. So I'm gonna be, is my presentation gonna be in Georgian there and in Russian here, and I'm gonna be speaking English, so we pretty much cover all of the languages. I'll start with the general introduction of what's happening on the global nut market. I'm just going to give you some quick facts. Then I'm going to speak about the regional trends, because we work in several countries in the region, in the nut sector. And then there will be a lot of speakers after me who know everything about some specific areas. So for Georgia, we're focusing on 4 types of nuts predominantly. It's, of course, the hazelnut, walnut, almonds, and pistachios. So when I say the world market, I mean the international trade of nuts. Here's the chart that shows that international trade of nuts is growing pretty fast, and the pace of increase, I see that everything was translated into Georgian, but it's okay. You can see it here, that the global trade in nuts, all types of nuts, is growing by about 7.8% per year. What does it mean? It means additionally $2 billion every year is being made on international trade for walnuts. I mean, all kinds of nuts. It's a lot of money, and the only faster growing category in horticulture is berries. Berries are growing by about 8%, so about the same pace. When you take other fruits, it's going to be closer to 3% per year. So it's an indication that there is still a potential of increased nut consumption globally. Let's see, I think we asked that question in the poll. I don't know what was the result, but here's the result. What are the key types of nuts traded in the world? And #1 nut is cashew, actually. I don't know if all of you know what cashew is, but it's this nut has become extremely popular over the last few years, and it's already beating almonds in the global trade. And these 2 nuts basically account for almost half of all of the global trade. And then 2 other big ones are walnuts and pistachios, about 11%. And then I also included peanuts, and because peanuts are not really nut tree crop, but it's considered a nut by consumers, so we usually include them in the analysis. It accounts for 8%, and hazelnut is the smallest of the top nuts, is 6%. Global nut market. Here I show the pace of increase of trade in percentage. And as you see, of the nuts that we are looking at, the fastest growing one is the walnut by about 7.8%, hazelnut 6.4%, pistachios 3.7%, and hazelnut by 3% per year. And I don't know if all of you have heard of the nuts indicated as the fastest growing ones. They're still very small and tiny in the global trade, but they're still growing very fast. These are like cola, betel, macadamia nut, and cashew, which is already very big. So very few people realize that the biggest competitor of walnuts or pistachios or almonds aren't really other countries, it's the other types of nuts. And the first one is cashew. When we were in the US with the Georgian delegation, with the Georgian growers this summer in California, learning from the experience of US growers, a lot of US growers were shocked by the low prices for walnuts, for example. And one of the reasons behind is the increase in production and trade of other types of nuts. So we should always be looking not only at our specific nut market, but also at other nuts, what's going on and where consumers are looking. For example, macadamia nut, is becoming extremely, popular, and the trade is growing so fast, and production is catching up. But it's a longer-term type of production, and of course, conditions aren't good for growing it in Georgia, but in Africa, there is a lot of expansion in this category. So if you look at how much more money is made by each of the nuts every year in the global trade, you could see that the biggest one is cashew again. So another indication. But the nuts we're looking at are also growing pretty fast, so it's a good news. So every year, you make globally, people make additional $200 million on walnuts, $300 million on almond trade, and so on. So, what is the reason for such a rapid increase in the global nut consumption, production, and trade? You probably all know. Sorry if I'm saying something very obvious, but one of the key reasons is a huge increase in the number of vegetarians worldwide. People that are looking for plant-based diets and paleo diets and all kinds of diets that include nuts. Another reason is that people have less time to cook. They eat on the go, so they eat more snacks. And nut is a perfect snack, and it's considered a healthy snack. Third reason is processing of nuts. In the past, we were talking about nut consumption. Now we're talking about consumption of various types of products that include nuts. For example, all kinds of nut flours that are used as ingredients in all kinds of food products. So this is another big area for increasing consumption. Healthy lifestyles. Again, nuts are considered good for your health. So unless you eat too much. This is the fifth reason, but it may be the most important reason. The snack industry has probably more money than any other food industry in the world put into advertising. So if you advertise something, it sells. Nuts are being advertised as part of the snack business, and they're selling very well. Some of the key global trends, positive, negative, what's happening worldwide. The global nut market is being dominated by one country, and that country is the United States. On three top nuts, the hazelnuts, walnuts, and pistachios, the US is making $8.4 billion of export revenue per year. And also US is one of the biggest importers of nuts. So the US market is huge, and it's already exporting a lot of nuts and products with nuts. So it's a huge industry. The pace of expansion in the US is amazing. When we look at Georgia, and we see thousands of hectares of new almonds and walnuts being planted. I mean, it's peanuts compared to what's been planted in the US. Cashew I already mentioned. Two countries most exporting cashews are Vietnam and India, and there is significant potential to boost production there as well. In the top 5, there are two other countries, Turkey and Iran, that you should be watching. And the negative factor is the trade wars. You all heard about the trade wars between US and China, US and India, US and Turkey. It has already made a major impact on the walnut industry, for example, but also on other nuts. What happened last year was that because of the trade wars and because of devaluation of Turkish lira and other factors, a lot of American nuts ended up in Europe. And that has lowered the prices not only in the US actually, but also in Europe. And it has also reduced the demand for lower quality nuts, which are usually exported from the Eastern Europe. So it's been a big shock on the industry. And that leads us to another negative factor. If you're going to be in a nut business, focus on high quality nuts, because low quality nuts are becoming harder to sell every year. Just an example of how important the quality is. You know, this is the graph from one of the USDA reports, is a US domination of the almond market. You know, you can produce a lot, but being able to export it efficiently means investing into quality and investing into marketing of quality. So the red part of the bars is the US trade, and it's basically total domination. What's happening in the neighboring countries? Ukraine, Moldova, and Uzbekistan in the walnut sector are biggest players. And here's the graph that shows the export trends from these three countries. As you could see, Uzbekistan is growing fastest, about 10% per year, Ukraine 7% per year, and Moldova 6% per year. So they're continuing to be among the top exporters, but also Ukraine and Moldova are among the largest global exporters of walnuts already. Well, this has been already mentioned, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. I just want to say that there is a huge potential in Georgia for exports of nuts. I also think that you should seriously consider exporting churchella, you know, with all kinds of nuts, not only with walnuts, as a specialty healthy snack. I think it has a lot of potential, no added sugar and everything else. Maybe you could make it, you know, a trendy product in the US. Why not? Now, going back to Georgia and talking about imports of nuts. As you see on this chart, there is a big trend to import more and more nuts to Georgia. Is this good or bad? And you can see what types of nuts are, basically all kinds of nuts, including hazelnuts. The answer basically will be in the next chart, but just a few facts. Imports of walnuts increased 8 times in 5 years, and imports of almonds 24 times in 5 years. So it means there's probably a growing consumption domestically, which is a good news for producers. Let's look at the trade balance without hazelnuts. Of course, hazelnut is a huge industry, so let's take it out and look at what's happening besides hazelnuts. As you could see, there is a growing imports but growing exports as well. So it means there is trading. Why is it good? Because growing nuts doesn't make you money. Selling nuts makes you money. So there is trading happening already. It means that in the future it will be easier to export. So it's a good news. If you look at the total balance of nut trade in Georgia, we would see that In 2008, it was the worst trade balance. Of course, we know because of the sting bar problems and hazelnut industry. But I think with the new types of nuts being planted over the years, Georgia could become a major exporter and get this balance back to where it was in 2015, 2016. Now about some additional regional trends. There is a lot of new plantings of walnuts in Ukraine, about 2,300 hectares every year. Of course, it will slow down next year, I think, because they're reducing the export, planting subsidies. The total area of walnuts in Ukraine is estimated at 18.7 thousand hectares, and a lot of hazelnuts are being planted as well. Also 2.3 thousand hectares in 2018. It means that hazelnut plantation is about the same as walnuts. The first orchards will start bearing fruits very soon, and the production of walnuts could double within the next 5 years, because there's a lot of new young orchards in the country. And of course there are problems with understanding how to handle them, how to export them, so it's time to learn from countries like US and Chile. In Moldova, the pace of planting new orchards has slowed down a lot. Currently there are 16,000 hectares and a production of about 35,000 tons. There is a growing share of high quality nuts in the total harvest in Moldova, which is good news for them. And they are starting to look into plantings of almonds and hazelnuts as well. At least 1,000 hectares are already available, but the total amount is not known yet. What's happening in Uzbekistan? I've been working in Uzbekistan since 2012, and one of the first things I suggested was, okay, plant nuts, because at that time it was very difficult to export fresh fruits. And they do plant nuts, and nobody knows how many hectares are planted. I mean, probably somebody knows, but this data is not regularly available. But I would say that it's probably more planted every year in Uzbekistan than in Ukraine and Moldova combined. So it's a very, very significant expansion. They could grow, conditions are perfect. They're also planting almonds and pistachios. And they're already exporting walnuts, and they're beating Ukraine and Moldova in the markets of Middle East, for example. The approach of Uzbekistan to exports is very simple. You name your price, we will offer you something cheaper. And that's basically, affecting everybody else's business. Couple of things, if you haven't started your nut business, that you should be aware of. Maybe if you started, maybe it will also be useful. Never let people who sell you nursery trees create business plans for you, because they're going to be misleading in most cases. Prices for nuts, which are included in the business plans, are often for the final product. To get to the final product condition, you need to invest a lot of money into processing of nuts. And a lot of people don't build that into their business plans. Please consider this. I've heard a lot of people say, okay, the demand is unlimited. There is no unlimited demand in the world. There is also a limit, there's always a limit. And that limit means if you want to sell more, you need to reduce the price, increase quality, or do something about it. And the prices are being under pressure, I already mentioned. Global prices are being under pressure. One of the most important problems and the biggest problems in the former Soviet Union countries, and in Georgia I've observed it over the years, that people don't really think that marketing costs money. People underestimate the costs of marketing. Just to give you an example, if you'd like to export your nuts, you have to have a budget for exports. to make money on exports, you should be making $100,000 more than on the local market, than selling on the local market in the Georgian conditions. This is the minimum budget that you need to run for personnel, for participation in the exhibition, for inviting buyers to visit your farm, to promotion materials. I mean, this is like the lowest possible budget. So marketing is not free. Exports are not free. Always build into business plan marketing costs. Because when I look at business plans in this part of the world, it seems like people aren't even planning to make money because you only have costs. You know, the revenue comes automatically, but it doesn't happen that way. You know, there are no marketing costs, and there should be marketing costs. And a couple of suggestions. We will send you these links to the group that Katerina has explained about. You could join these types of groups where you could also trade nuts, buy, sell nuts, buy and sell elements of technology, and follow the nut market, because we've got on East Fruit prices of all key types of nuts every year, every week, monitored by several countries in the region. Thank you very much, and I don't know if I have time to answer any questions. Okay, 2 minutes, one question. Microphone.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I just want to understand, what's the role of China in all this, especially the pricing of nuts? I understand there's a lot of walnuts being planted there.
Well, China is usually, you know, typical elephant that could turn things around. I think China makes more impact not by what it plants, but by how it manages the imports. For China, it's the same challenge as for many other countries, that you've got all kinds of nut quality, you know, going in and going out. So, you know, they import nuts from the US because of that quality, they need it, but there are trade wars involved, so it's very hard to predict. But in terms of future, I would say that you know, you'd have to specifically ask people dealing with walnuts to, you know, see where China is going. I'm not a nut market, you know, expert in monitoring everything, you know, very closely. So I know there's been a lot of planting in China. I know that they've invited specialists from the US to go there, but I don't know if it's going to, you know, change the market completely, or if it's going to be absorbed by by increased local consumption. It's hard to say. Okay, you can ask your questions in this